Hello and a warm welcome to Joburg today. We are here at the Sandton Convention Centre attending the Design Joburg Exhibition because we are talking about designer furniture in today's show, buying your first dream home, and we're also finding out more from an economist about what the recent credit downgrades will mean for your pocket.
We wanted to make a meaningful impact on the design community from not only just doing something glamorous, but we wanted to create a platform where people had a lot more access. So historically with shows, they're extremely expensive. So only the large manufacturers can really partake. It becomes exclusionary to the small young designers who only have a smaller budget to work with. And also, even the medium-sized designers have only so much budget, so they can't really show what they can do. So it's been a really interesting platform for us to address those sort of industry challenges.
One of the most exciting features in this exhibition has been the collaborations. And I think this is just the beginning. I think people are understanding what collaboration means. They learn what their bedroom could be like or their kitchen can be like, and not just an item individually.
Mpho is living her dream as an established interior designer. A couple of years ago, though, she was a process engineer in the mining industry. We asked Mpho to share some of the challenges facing interior designers in South Africa and a bit of her journey as an entrepreneur.
I quit my job a couple of years ago, went back to school, and I studied interior design, but I always knew that I wanted to do furniture design, and this is our initial range. So it's based on, I love ethnic patterns, and I love relating 2D things to 3D things. So I wanted to create something inspired by Africa, and that's what this initial range is inspired by. What I've found, especially as a startup, I launched the range, or I launched the company last year in September at Hello Ambassador, and it's very difficult as a newcomer. Obviously, first of all, as a newcomer, you already feel like, oh my gosh, is my stuff good enough? Are people going to like it? And then another thing is that who's going to manufacture these things that I'm coming up with? So luckily, I did engineering. So the way I design is I design like an engineer. So I always think about how is this thing going to be made and things like that. And we used to have an off-site company that we use, but now we've started manufacturing in-house. My biggest passion is keeping everything in-house, owning your processes. So next thing will be what timber do we use, and start investigating eco-timbers. Do we make those eco-timbers in South Africa? Where can we source our things locally? Where can we source our fabrics locally? Where can we make our own? So ultimately, the final product would be made here from beginning to end. So from up here, it would be manufactured in Africa. It would have African materials with African people working on it, and it would have that life cycle,
As you've just seen and heard, this exhibition features furniture designed by mainly South African interior decorators. Now, you could end up spending a little fortune at an exhibition like this, but even if you haven't budgeted for designer furniture, you could walk away with some really great ideas for your dream home. Of course, the first step is to invest in that dream home that would justify spending a little fortune on designer furniture that comes with little stories attached to it. So here's some advice for first-time home buyers. A slowdown in the economy always affects the housing market. Usually, price growth slows, making it easier for some to buy.
Completely. It is very pockets in Johannesburg. You have pockets. You have it at the coast. We've all been reading how the coast is booming and everything's happening, and you got foreign investors and everything is hot, going very fast at the coast, which is fine. Regional areas are quite different. Johannesburg in particular, and then Northcliffe within Johannesburg are very particular. So we don't necessarily, there's a lot of stock on the market, but that gives you as a buyer quite a number of choices that you have in buying units.
However, property is not a short-term investment, and those who believe they are going to make a quick profit after a short period will have to re-evaluate their decision to buy. Buying a home is an expensive exercise and includes all sorts of costs, including transfer fees and conveyancing costs.
As a first-time buyer, the first advice, the best advice I can give them, be aware of your homeowner's cost. A 1 million bond is going to cost you 10,000. So if you rent it out for 7,000, 8,000, plus your cost, you're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 of cost that you will be having to put in extra. Don't forget, we also have your rates. You also have your extra and additional costs that come above your bond. So a lot of people they might overextend themselves initially getting into a property and then realize, oops, there actually comes more to it cost-wise on a monthly basis than I thought. So you rather not push yourself to the limit cost-wise, have a little bit of flex, get the property, see what actually after 1 year worth of renting it out and of cost, where do you stand, and then you take a decision going forward.
Here are some of the current trends around the property market in and around Johannesburg.
Well, Johannesburg has always been the, as we know, economic hub of sub-Saharan Africa. And consequently, the rentals are always in high demand in this area. People are attracted to the area primarily for jobs and work. And very often they would prefer to rent initially before they commit to buying. That's the one reason. And the other reason is very often they're not South African and they need to familiarize themselves with the areas, prices in the area, and in order to raise bonds, which take time.
John, welcome. Great to have you with us to be able to chat to you about the economy and the property market.
That's good to be here.
So to begin with, against the current economic conditions in the South African economy, how would you describe the health of the property market in terms of appetite from a buyer and seller perspective?
Well, I think there's two markets at the moment. There's the Western Cape and then there's the rest. And certainly the Western Cape over the last few years has been outperforming the rest of the national housing market by miles. To an extent, I would even say it's got a bit bubbly around the mountain in the areas on Table Mountain and near to it. Mm-hmm. But for the rest of the country, the biggest market being Gauteng and just about everywhere else outside the Western Cape, the markets more or less track the economy, and that has meant since 2012 a weakening economic growth rate, weakening job creation, weakening household income growth, and also rising interest rates from 2014 to early last year has softened demand. And I'd say you could call it a mediocre market at best. Mm-hmm. We have had a little bit of a perk up in the national house price inflation rate, in line with signs that the economy may just be turning slightly for the better. So we got to 5.5% year-on-year house price growth in April, mm-hmm. according to our index. That, however, is still below CPI inflation. So in real terms, that's still negative. So not wildly exciting at the moment. And I think realistically, although there are signs of some mild economic improvement from last year's near 0% growth, I don't think we can we can get too excited about economic recovery. And I still think we'll bumble along in the housing market on a national average basis in lower single-digit house price growth for possibly the next few years.
Data also suggests that consumers right now are cash-strapped. They're highly indebted. Having said what you just said, given that negative sentiment is most likely to impact on consumers' buying decisions when it comes to property, what advice as a property strategist can you offer to those potential home buyers?
So I would say we need to especially in these more uncertain economic times and more volatile times as we're probably heading towards some sort of political change, whatever that may be, that a more cautious approach gets taken. And what that normally means is, you've got to think carefully about two of your biggest purchases which imply a whole lot of recurrent expenditures. The biggest one is the house. The bigger the house you buy, the higher the operating costs. The more expensive the house, the higher the rates and tariffs, the rates bill. So, if you buy half the size of a house that you would have thought of buying, with that comes a lot less operating costs, maintenance costs, cleaning costs, whatever it might be. Think about that carefully. There's a lot of insurance costs. There's a myriad of costs involved with the house. And then the second most important one is your car. With that comes a whole lot again, maintenance costs, insurance costs, and so on. And the more expensive cars, that tends to be more, so on average. So it's important to make those decisions, because reversing a property decision, if you find you've overcommitted. Now, just to give you an idea of how many people have effectively overcommitted, right now, or in the most recent FNB estate agent survey, about 13% of sellers are estimated to be downscaling due to financial pressure. So effective, now that's a good number. That was 34% back in 2009. It's not a bad number. What it means is that at any given stage, there's a very significant amount of people that find out they've overcommitted for whatever reason. They can't maintain the costs involved with this house, sell to downscale. the transaction costs involved with the house are huge. It's a very expensive mistake to make. So people have to think carefully. It's nice to own a house, but one has to think carefully and buy well within your means, and be prepared for interest rate hikes should they resume. Be prepared for rates and tariff hikes which have been above inflation. Very, very important.
Sure, thank you, John. One last question to you. How can a current bondholder who finds himself to be indebted use his bond account to leverage and to use that as a leverage to turn around his personal finances?
Well, many of us, in a lot of ways, you can consolidate a lot of your debt. The home loan is very often cheaper than the credit card debt, or the personal loan debt, or even the vehicle finance debt. So, if consolidating a lot of your debt in a home loan is not a bad idea, even possibly with sort of an extension of a further loan, if you can avoid that higher cost debt. I guess that's the one thing. A lot of us with the prepaid loans, we pay down the loan well in advance of the schedule. It means that you've got room to access that bond. And so a person like myself, for instance, I use my bond, where every number of years when you have to buy a new car, the bond is very often a cheaper form of financing than vehicle finance. So it's a good way to, it's something to think about. And then, of course, important is any spare cash lying around. In a low interest current account, put it into that home loan, that flexi account where you can put it in and withdraw it as you need it. Put it in there for as long as you don't need it, as much as you can and for as long as you don't need it. And that cuts your interest rate, which is accumulated on a daily basis. The small increments of interest are accumulated to your account, accrued to you on a daily basis. You cut that by, 20,000, 50,000, whatever, every little bit helps. So your daily interest goes down, it accumulates.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Hey, what up? This is Books, and you're watching Joburg Today.
Like us on Facebook, joburgtoday.tv, and follow us on Twitter at Joburg Today. And remember, for more coverage of this beautiful city of ours, do check out our playlist. That's it from the team here at Design Joburg. Have a good Monday.